everyone, and welcome back to Purple Noon, a podcast. I am Stephanie Conti, and I am here with the Stormin' Norman to my Paul, Savanna Lanausse. Oh, I did a little just for you. What you think? Yeah, showed off my hidden career in music for you.
Yeah, no, of course. I feel very loved. Thank you.
Yeah, you should. How are you doing?
I'm good. I missed you. I missed this. How are you?
Very good. Miss you too. Miss this as well. So Savannah, July 10th, I heard from a little birdie on a Criterion group chat on Facebook that the Barnes & Noble 50% off sale is arriving July 10th. I don't know if this is secret insider information, but it's out there. It's out there.
Best time of the year.
Yeah, it's like Christmas. It is Christmas in July. Like, if you think about it, for us nerds.
Yeah. I'm really excited. I am, because I thought for some reason maybe they weren't going to do it this year because of Corona.
Ooh, okay. I could kind of see that, but at the end of the day, like, they would make some good sales.
That's very true. That's true. What are you looking at getting?
So I was looking up, because I recently just became certified in Hong Kong cinema. Yes, I boast. But I was looking up Hong Kong films, and I realized they only have like two. They have In the Mood for Love, and then they have the Bruce Lee box set. So the Bruce Lee box set would be cool. I really like that. But I was a little upset because they have like John Woo's The Killer. They have Chungking Express by Wong Kar-wai. And I was like, ooh, like I want those. And I look at all of them and they're out of print.
Oh.
I want an OG John Woo box. I think that would be cool. But I think for the sale, I want to do Scorsese shorts.
Oh,
maybe I might do the Bruce Lee box.
Ooh.
And then also, I think it's called Wildlife. It's the new Paul Dano movie.
I saw it.
You watched the film itself?
I've seen it, yes.
How?
Wildlife? That's been out for a bit.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
How was it?
I enjoyed it. It's slow and it's different, but I still think he did a very good job for it being like his first movie.
Okay, cool. Now I know. It's definitely going to be one that I'm going to bring home.
Yeah, you can rent it, I think. Like, you can rent it if you want to see it before, and I think it might be even on, like, Showtime or something. I saw it on there.
I'm in the mood to get, like, I don't know, a real creepy horror film that isn't Antichrist, you know? I was thinking maybe of, like, Jigoku, or, you know, like, maybe one of those, because they have a lot of, like, Asian horror. So I might go for one of those, or they have a German one called, like, Haxen.
I know me and you have a strong love for Japanese horror. Or Japanese
House Two? Oh my god!
What experience you made me go through.
What a classic! What a feministic classic, might I add?
We'll have to talk about that at some point.
We'll have to talk about it. I think House is the most feminism film. It's the superior feminism film. It's the secret.
We gotta explain.
Yeah, we will one day. But so what are you thinking of grabbing?
Definitely In the Mood for Love. I've been wanting to see that one for a long time, and I've just heard like great
Wong
things about it.
Yeah.
What else?
You got to get Scorsese shorts.
Oh well, yeah. I was gonna lean towards that too, of course. I think it's between A Police Story or Scenes from a Marriage.
Ooh,
because
okay.
I've seen Scenes from a Marriage and I really liked it, but I've never seen A Police Story.
Police Story, I've only seen the first one. I have the Criterion DVD.
Okay.
Definitely worth it.
Recommend?
Definitely, yes. And when you do get it and when you do watch it with the subtitles. Don't do the dub version, because the dub version is just poor and it just takes away from the movie itself, because it like it intrudes the soundtrack and stuff like that. But I really enjoyed Police Story. It's good. I mean, it's Jackie Chan at his prime.
Love that. But yeah, other than that, the only thing I thought I was going to look into, and you kind of mentioned it, I do want to get, I'm a big fan of horror movies, but I don't know, nothing in the Criterion catches my eye right now. So
I guess, like, I'm really just looking for something horror, like, I want something horror, but then again, I don't know if it's a movie. I think I might want to try it, maybe a horror video game I might lean towards.
Oh yeah, even a book.
Oh, a book. Yes. I need a good horror book because I don't get scared when I read horror books. Like, I need something like just...
desensitized.
What was that?
I think you're just desensitized after reading
I mean,
some of the books.
like, I might, you know what? This is, I think I might get another Junji Ito book.
Okay.
You know Junji Ito?
Yeah, you've told me about him.
Oh, very good, very good. He's great. He's great. I highly recommend. He's spooky anime. That's definitely for sure. Creepy. Like, I've looked at it and I've been like, ew. Like, that's usually how I react when I see his stuff. But like, it was just so funny. My boyfriend was like, "This is the scariest book ever," and I read it and I was like, whatever's. I mean, it was great, but it wasn't like nah. Scary. Mm-hmm. Like, I want good scary, but without it being like inhumane. Well, okay. I'm tired of people being like scary and then take it on a whole nother level. And yeah, I do that myself, but I wish we could have like just a good regular scary story.
Now my question would be like, do you want like disorderly scary or like...
I like a book that makes me shocked. I do like shock value. And that's my favorite book, Disorderly. And if you haven't read it, please go read it. It's fantastic. It gave Savanna nightmares, right?
Yeah, it was
all over the place. But that's what made it terrifying, was how could someone think like this?
The main character was very scary to read.
I think I definitely would love another book like Disorderly. Because it wasn't so much for me scary, it was just the shock value that I loved.
Yeah, you know what? It did have like the element of surprise going for it. And I think that's kind of what made it scary, because it would go from like right to left very quickly.
Yeah, like you had this dude like killing, and then all of a sudden he's hiding in a funeral home, and then he gets caught by the funeral director, and then the funeral director's like, oh, like he's also on heroin at that time, and it's weird. And then the funeral director's like, oh, you want to sleep with the bodies? It's $200. And it's like, what? And it just like proceeds in like in immoralness. It just steps, but it's all just one like little slap to the face at once.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it. Highly recommend Disorderly by Jamie K.
Yeah, if you guys have any books like that, shout Stephanie out.
Yeah, or any movies or anything like from what I'm describing. I mean, it doesn't have to be like heroin, murder, and then necrophilia. I don't need it in that order. Just something like shock value I would really enjoy right now.
All right.
I think that really just shows my mental state more than everything. It's like, I want to be shocked. I want to experience something that shakes me to my core.
Careful what you wish for.
I know, someone's going to be like, oh, Terrifier or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you guys know any movies or books or anything that would appease my hunger for what I am looking for, let me know.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, and without further ado, I'm sorry, I cut you off. What were you saying, Sweet Pea?
No, I was just saying, yeah, for sure. No, okay. It's okay.
All right. So without further ado, let's get into the review. All right, today we're going to be talking about The Five Bloods.
I like that rhyme.
I rhymed?
Yeah, without further ado, let's get into the review.
Oh my god, I have a catchphrase! That's so good. Awesome. Wow, history in the making. Without further ado, let's get into the review. Wow. I did something hard. There. I made history right there.
Nobody could use that.
That's it. I'm trademarking it as we speak. All right, watch someone at like some old show had it, like some show like from the 40s or something like that had that trademarked.
We're bringing it back.
Bringing it back. All right. So today we're going to be talking about Da 5 Bloods, which recently came out on June 12th and is available on Netflix. So Da 5 Bloods is by Spike Lee, written by Danny Blyson, Paul DeMeo, and also Spike Lee as well. And it's about 4 African-American vets battle the forces of man and nature when they return to Vietnam seeking the remains of their fallen squad leader and the gold he helped them find. My mother is yelling at the dog. He's being a bad boy. So it stars Delroy Lindo, Jonathan Majors, Clark Peters, Norm Lewis, Isaiah Whitlock Jr., Melanie Thierry, Paul Walter Hauser, Jasper, and here is a Swedish last name, Pakkonen. I'm going to assume that's okay. And Chadwick Boseman. So as always, Savanna, before we get into the spoilerly bits and whatnots, what did you think of Da 5 Bloods?
What a unique film for Spike Lee to do.
Mm-hmm.
Especially now, it's such a definitely not that it's a unique topic, but I think me and you talked about it a little bit before, that there's not a lot of films about the Vietnam War. Like, you can count them on maybe
in the whole war genre. There's not a lot.
Exactly. Yeah,
it's always World War II,
and even then, it's usually in the midst of war. We don't get a lot of movies in general that talk about what happened when these men come back from war and what they have to deal with and what their lives are. So I really like that take on it because we don't get a lot of movies like that, and it's an interesting and very real thing to talk about. But Spike Lee went beyond, above and beyond with that topic too, and it was such a great movie. I cried.
I cried twice.
It has a lot of different speeds, which I appreciated it. What is that? Appreciate it. I appreciate that. And yeah, kind of the beginning is more of a development thing. You learn about their friendship, and then it just takes off in the middle. And this becomes more of a deeper and challenging sort of topic in the movie. So I really commend Spike Lee for making a movie like this and succeeding, like, with flying colors.
Absolutely. And I think I totally agree with what you say in terms of you don't see many movies like this, because there are movies where it's like, like Rambo, going back, looking for POWs, but it's all action. It never really talks about the full, PTSD, the full mental, how war not only can damage you physically, but mentally. I feel like it's a lot of times these movies are more focused on the action part of it and not necessarily, trying to show the true side of the mentality of war and what happens to these soldiers that go to war. If you have not seen it, highly recommend. It's a slow movie, and like Savanna said, it has many different speeds and paces, but once you get to the halfway mark, it really picks up and it transforms in a way. But I highly recommend it. And this is tough for me to say, I think this is my favorite. And I say it's tough for me to say because I love BlacKkKlansman. I love BlacKkKlansman. But this one I think tops it.
For me, I'm not going to dethrone BlacKkKlansman because it's also a special movie. I saw it with you. I enjoy it. I love a lot of things about BlacKkKlansman. But I got to say, it's definitely runner-up. Like, for me, it does beat out Do the Right Thing. So that's saying a lot for me, too. So it's such it is definitely needs to be put up there.
I just think the 5 Bloods, I think, for me, without spoiling anything, the directing is my favorite. And I think what makes it a step up than BlacKkKlansman is I do think that the directing is better than in BlacKkKlansman. I mean, that is, BlacKkKlansman directing is still fantastic. Spike Lee is just a god when it comes to directing. But this movie, I am going to put up more. So if I were to do like a Spike Lee rank, it would be Da 5 Bloods, it would be BlacKkKlansman, and it would be Do the Right Thing. And that is also stating, like, I've never seen every Spike Lee film, so that can change. But as of right now, with the Spike Lee films that I have seen, it is in that order. That would be my ranking. So let's talk about what makes this movie so special, and that is the characters.
Yeah.
So Savanna, what did you think about all the different types of characters found within this film? And now we're going to get into the spoilers, FYI.
I think they all kind of represented people that went through the Vietnam War, and that's why I think it worked so well. And the actors did such an like, they had such great chemistry. You really believe these guys were like lifelong friends. Each character kind of dealt with something different after the war, and I think that's what makes it very, very special. And I think Spike Lee put a lot of time and effort in sort of molding these characters. For example, Paul, we'll get into him, but he's kind of the star of the show. He had probably the worst case of PTSD. He had a very strained relationship with his son, and we'll get into that. And he never really left Vietnam. And then Otis, who ended up having a relationship with the Vietnamese woman, and all these little things that definitely did happen during the war. So these characters are special because they're real. Just point blank. What do you think?
I completely agree. And I like how everyone kind of has their own battle with, with going back to Vietnam. For Paul, it's the PTSD. Whereas for a character like Otis, it's going back to his old love. And then you have Eddie, someone who is in more of a financial situation, is going back for the gold. So I think I think all the characters are so well constructed. Even I really appreciated not only, the main actors, but then you had this little subgroup that comes in midway through the film. And I loved not only the characters, but I loved who they were because it taught me something. Yeah. I didn't even think that maybe by chance, this thought never came across my mind, that there were still bombs, that there were still traps and everything found in these war-torn countries.
Yeah.
So two veterans from BlacKkKlansman, Jasper Pakonen and Paul Walter Hauser, are part of this group with Melanie Theory, where they go back and they disarm all of these bombs and traps and everything. Because, after a point of time, these war-torn lands become homes. And they even show, like, at one part, like, that, kids were stepping on these traps, missing limbs, getting killed. Like, and that was just something I never even thought to consider. I never thought about it.
50 years ago. Something like that. It was in our parents' generation, but can you imagine still, like, there's bombs? There's just all these, and I'm sure the Vietnam suffered environmentally from napalm and like there's just a lot of things that like people don't realize are still happening because of that war.
Yeah, immense. And I think it's one of those years where countries who are in war, I truly believe that the land is in war for thousands of years. Like, the war will, even though any war can end, it will always show on the soil it happened on. And I think that obviously is shown through here with all these bombs and leftover. And I think this movie also showed me how little I actually knew about the Vietnam War. And I think that was because I don't remember being taught about it in school. I don't remember being fully educated about it. And
that's a very good point.
I realized that because as soon as, like, they were talking about France's involvement, I was like, what do you mean? Like, I was so confused because it's just something like, I don't know anyone in my family. My grandfather served the Korean War, not the Vietnam War. So I knew more about that. Even though still, like, if we're going to talk wars, the only war that I really learned about was World War II growing up. But I really didn't know much about Vietnam War, even what my grandfather served in the Korean War. And this just kind of showed, like, wow, I just because, like, I wasn't, obviously we did not grow up in that time period, even in a time period where it was still talked about. Today, in our time period, if it's referenced, it's either because we meet someone who served in the war, even though I have actually never personally met someone who I've known to serve in the war, or it's always just been, like, we're talking about Apocalypse Now, or we're talking about like, you know, like the jokes of people going like, oh, I served in Nam, like, you know, those jokes about the old flashbacks and things like that. Yeah. But I realized, I was like, I don't know jack about the Vietnam War.
I think you spark an interesting debate, though. We don't learn anything about the I think I learned when it happened and sort of why it happened, but I don't know anything like why, like how long it lasted.
Wait,
I
so
don't know.
I just realized, so do we not learn the wars we didn't win?
Wow.
Wow. Conspiracy theory.
But I also think that it has a lot to do with we don't get very far in our education system in history. Like, I think I would get to the like 40s and we would stop. Like, school would end or something. Like, we don't get very far in history.
We would talk about like we would talk about like George Washington and the Declaration of Independence, and then all the way till the moment Hitler died, we stopped learning history, you know? And then maybe if you were lucky, maybe if you had a cool class, you learned about Chernobyl. But that was it.
Even that was it. And it's interesting because you would think we should learn about a war that like our parents were essentially born into when this was going on, and how significant this was in America, because that's when all the, you know, the protests were happening because a lot of people didn't want to be a part of this war. You would think that we would learn that. That's important. But yeah, I have to agree with Stephanie. I don't know a lot personally about the Vietnam War.
Yeah, like my dumb self just looked up. Did we win? Like, because I was never fully educated about it. And of course, I do take some responsibility not looking more into it, especially when talking about a movie like this. It was just now. This is our second time recording the podcast because we had a little bit of an error the other day. But while I was recording it, I just realized, like, in this moment now, I was like, I know nothing about the Vietnam War. What is going on? Like, and if I do know, it's from Call of Duty. Like, that is my level of IQ in terms of Vietnam War, Call of Duty level.
I know there was a lot of, like, brutality in this war, if that makes sense. Like, and I think the movie even says it, like, on both sides. Like, even like, we did a lot of bad things there. We like terrorized people. So like, I know like it was a brutal war, and I know a lot of people say like we shouldn't have even been in that war. Who was president during that war? Do you know?
I think I saw a clip of a Lyndon B. Johnson.
Okay, well, yeah. But
so LBJ, and then I know the war lasted for a few years.
I think so. Yeah.
I think so. We're sorry, guys. If anyone is out there who served the Vietnam War, we are so sorry for the level of disrespect that we have.
Like, ignorant. We're really not trying to be ignorant. I think we should have more movies like this, especially when it comes to people leaving wars, people going back home, like what they have to deal with. So if anybody would like to educate us a little bit about what happened, some of the effects, we'd love to know. We like to learn. We do.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially anyone who lived during that time period, anyone who grew up during that time period, definitely let us know like how it was during that time period and what you learned from there growing up in that era when it was currently happening.
Yeah, for sure. Let us know.
Now, speaking of that, so we got to talk, before we get into Paul and the characters, we got to talk about that intro. We got to talk about the intro to the movie. How I feel like not only is Spike Lee a great... Are you whispering to someone?
I was like singing the song.
Oh, I thought maybe you had your husband's family dog over, and I thought you were like telling him, and I was like, is he there? Tell him to say hi.
No, I was singing Marvin Gaye.
Oh, gotcha. But yeah, in the beginning, not only do I think Spike Lee is an amazing director, but let's be real, dude can make a presentation like no other.
Yes, yes.
Like in the beginning, and I think also the beginning kind of sets the tone for what the middle of the film brings. Because in the beginning, within the first 3 minutes of the film, it is complete footage of violence throughout just history, and involving the Vietnam War, involving all different types. Like one of them, like they showed the clip of the I don't recall the name, but the monk that set himself on fire.
Yeah.
They had that, but there was one footage that I was like, my jaw dropped, and it was the footage of what I believe, and I could be wrong, was a young Vietnamese man being shot in the head.
Yeah.
That was probably the most jarring thing I've seen in a long time.
And apparently that's a very famous clip from the war.
See, I never saw that clip. I only knew about the young girl who was burned from the napalm. I only knew about her, which, by the way, she's still around, and she actually got full skin grafts and everything.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
I always knew about the girl. I always knew that infamous photo of her crying naked with the burns on her body. But then they showed video footage. I never knew video footage of that ever existed.
Same.
Like, I knew obviously, footage of the war existed, but never of her specifically.
I actually agree, because I've seen actually like the photo of the man getting shot. I've seen that photo, but I've never seen it in like real time. So it was definitely jarring to actually see somebody getting assassinated.
Yeah, and what I like is this definitely, the movie feels, even though it's a very different topic for Spike Lee, it still feels like a Spike Lee film, and it still brings in the common elements that you see. For like that presentation slideshow type of vibe that we've seen before in Do the Right Thing. I believe we've also seen it in BlacKkKlansman as well. And the constant reference to Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. I really appreciate. Because in actuality, like, all of those are still relevant in all of these movies. Yeah. They're not like out of place. They are still entirely relevant, especially what I believe Martin Luther King Jr. Because let's talk about Storm and Norman. My theory is, for the reason why everyone hails Storm and Norman is kind of like he was their Martin Luther King Jr. while they were in Vietnam.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. And I think that's where the connection comes from, and why to this day the characters like still hold on to Norm very tightly.
Yeah, and I think and Paul has a more serious and a more deeper connection with but we'll get into that with Storm and Norman. But I really liked the idea of Storm and Norman, meaning I liked how whenever they talked about him, they made him seem like almost godlike in a way that was not, how do I say it? In a way that wasn't like rude, like it wasn't like they were overstepping or anything when I mean by godlike.
No, I get where you're coming from.
I kind of liked how he was like this patron saint over them, and was like their guiding light through everything.
I think one of my favorite quotes in the movie is when they're talking about, like, one of them starts talking about why Norm was so important, and they say like, well, when our whole country was telling us that we were garbage and not giving us rights, like, Norm told us we were worth it. Norm made us proud of our skin. Norm made us proud to be doing this. And I think that's a very important realization too from history, that, even when they were serving, they still didn't have rights and still were fighting for a lot of things. And just that little snippet is, I don't know, I think Spike Lee is a genius.
One of the best quotes that I believe sums that up from the film is they were saying, we were fighting an immoral war, not in our own land, for rights we didn't even have. Yeah, and I think that, like, when I was like, ooh, snap.
Very powerful.
Like, oh, this movie is entirely powerful. And that I think also what further at least showed me as a viewer to the movie, what exactly, like, the level of, and I'll say disrespect that these soldiers, like, black soldiers had faced, was when Otis's girlfriend, his Vietnamese girlfriend, Tien, I believe that's how you pronounce her name, when she admits that she has a child with him, and he's like confused, and she was like, we were exiled because everyone knew by the color of her skin that she was part black. And then she goes and says, the Americans taught us the N-word. They taught us what you are, which to me was something I never thought of. Because I'm thinking, in my mind, I'm thinking that, when these soldiers went over, maybe they got either similar. I mean, I would have thought that at the end of the day, when when the Vietnamese looked at these soldiers, it didn't matter whether they were white or black.
Right.
But the fact that they were learned that, you have the white soldiers who are higher on the scale and the black soldiers who are bottom. And the fact that they learned that from the army themselves was just very shocking.
Yeah. And it's the reality of things for sure. Like, I'm sure there
And it
are
truly just shows how racism is taught.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I'm sure Tien's story and her daughter's story, there's probably a lot of mixed children because of the Vietnam War, because of the relationships, and just thinking like because of Americans, they were taught hate. And that, unfortunately, that, probably still is a product to this day.
Yeah. So that to me was shocking, and I also really did enjoy that little bonus for Otis, because it made like that whole plot, even though it's a subplot and it does slightly deter from the main storyline, it still enhances the overall message, and not only the message but the gravity of the nature that they were going through.
Yeah.
Like, I think through that woman's perspective, we really got to see how they were viewed at during the military. Also, we got to just dive into Paul. We got to dive into the character that is Paul.
Yeah.
So when we first are introduced to Paul, what I like about Spike Lee is that at the end of the day, he is a man who, when I'm trying to figure out the best words to represent this.
Yeah.
When trying to exemplify Black characters, I love how he makes characters that no matter what their opinions are, there are no right or wrong. And I say this because you have a character in the film who wears a Make America Great Again hat, a Black man who wears a Make America Great Again hat. What I like about this, and I'm not political in any sense of the way, but what I like about this, I think it's a good message because it shows that, I guess what I'm trying to say is, damn, I'm really teetering around this subject, but I really just liked how they didn't make fun of it. Like, they teased him, but he wasn't a bad person because he wore the hat. Just because he was Black, he was allowed to have Republican views if he chose so.
I see what you're saying, and I think that's kind of what Spike Lee was going for too. I mean, and I think it also has to do with a lot of Paul's character. He's somebody, and he says it, he's somebody that is tired of, and it has to do with the war, I presume. He's like, I want it to be about me, my country, I want to focus on us, and that's very much Paul's character, where he had very pro-America values.
Whether it's in today or like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever, it's always been kind of looked down upon if a Black man is Republican. It's always like, no, you have to be Democrat. And I like this sense of, even though personally I don't agree with, the political climate going on today. I do. And I'm independent, so I see evil on both sides. But I like the fact that we were able to create this character that we didn't shun. He wasn't evil because he had a political belief.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really appreciated that. And then also showing that a Black character can have these type of views without being a joke.
I agree. And I think I don't know. I think he was taken more serious because of those views. I think they kind of looked at him and was like, but why? Why are you doing that? Why are you wearing that hat? And I think he does explain it in a way where he's just kind of like, I want to focus on our country and I don't want to worry about anybody else. But at the end of the day, like, it is his character.
Yeah.
And I think Spike Lee does a good job.
I really, like, when I saw that, I thought they were going to be, ripping jokes the entire time. I thought it was just going to be like, oh, this guy is going to be a villain or some type of evil character because of that hat. I mean, at some points when the hat is placed on other people, it kind of shows. But I also think that shows that in particular, that hat and that saying was the meaning of it changed as it went from person to person.
Yes.
So because it switched, it went to 3 different characters. It went to Paul, it went to the Vietnamese soldier, and it went to Jean Reno's character. And I liked how even with that hat on, that hat meant different things to different people.
I agree, definitely.
And I like that. I like that sense. I mean, I would never wear the hat in just FYI. But I liked what he used it for, and I liked his representation of it.
Yeah, and I think the character of Paul is so much deeper than that hat too. I think we start to realize that there's many different layers of Paul, and the main one being he never left Vietnam. Essentially, he's still kind of stuck there in a lot of ways. We can talk about, I think, next, like what a realistic picture of PTSD he painted for us.
Oh, absolutely. And at one point in the film, he tells his friends, like, I see Storm and Norman every night. I see him every night, and I talk to him. And he's embarrassed, and he's like, you guys think I'm crazy. And they're like, no, we don't. And I think that was, even though that scene was very small, such a great way to show how people with PTSD are afraid to say things like that. Yeah. They are afraid to voice their opinion. To voice their experiences because they don't want to be deemed as crazy. They don't want to be deemed as, like, oh my God, they got to be locked up if they're seeing ghosts and stuff.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, like you said, these people are stuck in the war. And when you are mentally stuck in the war and stuff like that, you will have visions. I mean, it is common PTSD symptoms. Either people, there are people who see ghosts. There are people who have dreams about it. There are people who, if they hear a certain noise or if they see a certain image, like they just, it just seems like the world is collapsing in on them. Like PTSD comes in many different shapes and sizes. And I also liked how his kind of PTSD progresses in a way where what happens when it like the different levels, the different intensities of it.
Yeah. And I think it's important to realize during the Vietnam War, and we can even say up until now, like therapy and support groups were kind of looked down upon. So
yeah, it was just kind of like, oh, you weren't tough enough to man the war, which obviously is the most effed up opinion you can have if you think of that.
And these men weren't given help. Like, think about it, especially even now. Like, unfortunately, like I think now things are better and it's not, there's more education towards what, the war does to you. But these men were never given help unless they were brave enough to seek it.
Brave enough to seek it, and sadly, those who were brave enough to seek it, to say it at some point in time, there's still people today who say it and who are still shunned and who are still put down, and it's like, nah, you're just, I feel it's so terrible that we don't have PTSD like in-depth programs accessible to everyone. Because let's be real, today we live in a modern age where PTSD is not a thing just from war anymore.
Yeah.
PTSD can happens in sexual assault, rape cases. Several police officers go through PTSD, even people who work in the medical field. Even right now, people who are working in the medical field, I can't imagine what these people are experiencing.
I agree.
And I feel like overall, PTSD just needs to be, and therapy in general, just needs to be a bigger access. Like, just as we would, I wish we could get a point in the world where getting our regular routine checkup would be the same as going and you do 2 things. You get your physical and then you would get like your mental, like a mental checkup. And I wish that was more accessible to everyone.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, like even with all the education we have, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people have access to mental health professionals. And that's really sad that we're still fighting for that in a way. So 2020, we're still fighting to get regular mental health professional checkups. And can you imagine in the 60s, in the 70s, when this was happening? Like, they just go home and figure it out.
And I think, and yeah, it's just repressed. They have to forget it. That was one of the biggest like options that you can do. Forget it, whether it be in war, whether it be sexual assault, rape, whether it be just being a part of some type of violent, like whether it was a shooting. Because even back then they had like, I want to say they had that crazy, I think it was at Texas University, maybe an Arizona University. They had shootings, they have riots, they had all those things that people can suffer PTSD from. Mm-hmm. And what was the main prescription at the time was just to bury it deep within you and forget it.
Yeah, which is going to obviously cause problems later on. And mm-hmm. obviously some men in war deal with it, and women, of course, now deal with it better than others. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, you're talking about like warfare, like the things they see, we're not ever going to experience.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has their own battles, but it's everyone's, even if they're like, everyone has their own battles. So, you know, your battles and my battles are going to be entirely different. But even everyone in the same war has their own battles.
Yes.
Sees their own things that other people won't see.
Yeah.
So I totally think that this movie was needed, and I hope this movie gets more recognition, and I hope this movie does start a conversation in terms of that aspect as well. Mm-hmm. I hope this movie starts a conversation in many different aspects.
I agree.
But I hope the PTSD and access to therapy and treatment and not being able and being able to speak out and things as such as that, I hope that becomes an even bigger conversation. As this movie picks up more viewership. Mm-hmm. But now let's dive deeper into, okay, we got to talk about the actor, Delroy Lindo, Paul.
Yes.
I was taken aback by his acting and how incredible he was, especially those moments where he has his monologues, where he's alone. And even the moment, like I cried so hard when he had his own moment with Storm and Norman, and we kind of then realized why his character had been acting the way he had been the entire film. So aggressive, so like, I have to do this, so intense.
Yeah.
I thought it was, and he had just so many different dialogues, and they were a little bit long, but I enjoyed every second of it when it was him talking to himself, and even moments where he was talking to the camera.
Yeah, incredible. I don't think a lot of actors could pull that off, honestly.
Oh my God, no. And I was really hoping, I was like, I hope this man gets a nomination, because it was incredibly impressive and very moving when he's having his dialogues to himself and things like that. And you see not only, and I've told you before, the best actors can do the most. I think one of the best qualities, I've had so much caffeine, so if I'm like restating things like 3 times, that's why. But I think an actors can show their best ability through acting through their eyes. And Delroy really nails it, especially when he's having his conversations, because he's not having huge outward bodily reactions to demonstrate, you know, how he is feeling. He shows it through his eyes, and he does a magnificent job at it.
And honestly, for me, it was very heartbreaking, because you kind of see this man unraveling, and they're in the jungle of Vietnam at this point. Like, they're back in the jungle. Mm-hmm. And you can kind of see that he's back in the war when he's talking, when he's saying all these things. Like, he was literally just put back where he was 50 years ago.
Yeah. And it like almost like a time machine.
Yeah.
And it was, and even though, and we kind of realize why, and the reason why he, out of all the other characters, the reason why he suffered from this PTSD the most to this level was because in a flashback sequence, it's revealed that he accidentally shoots and kills Storm and Norman.
Yeah.
In a flashback sequence when the enemy had come in, like, and he shot his gun, and he accidentally also shot Storm and Norman. And there's just this beautiful scene where Paul is walking, and then Stormy Norman's like, hey, and he's like, what you doing here? He's like, I came to talk to you, and he's hugging him, and he's like, it ain't no thing, blood, it ain't no thing, and he just starts sobbing, and then I'm in the corner rocking myself, crying so hard.
The most touching, because it's like, for me, I saw the relationship as more as a fatherly and son thing, because they all looked up to him very much. So when he was just like, it was just an accident, it's okay, I was like, it's okay, it's all right, Paul, like, it's okay.
Yeah, for me, my weakness, if you show an older man just blubbering, crying, like, oh, I'm gonna in the corner as well. Like, I can't handle it. Like, I can handle I can, like, obviously I would never want to see, but I can handle my mom crying. I can handle my grandma crying. But if you showed me my dad or my grandpa crying, I'm like, oh, like in the corner with them as well. I can't. But that scene was just so well done. And speaking of Storm and Norman, I thought Chadwick Boseman did a fantastic job. But I also want to talk about how these flashback sequences were filmed.
Yeah.
So you normally in a flashback sequence, you expect them to hire two different types of actors, one to play the present and one to play the past. Or they use some, foo-foo animation, graphics and stuff to make them younger, kind of like the Irishman type of deal. But no, in this film, you had Chadwick Boseman, and then once in the flashback sequences, you had all the same actors, not de-aged, not made young, whatever it may be, still the same way that they look, just obviously in uniform, acting with Storm and Norman, doing the, like, having these recreations.
Yeah.
And I think it shows that it's more so not flashbacks, it's more so them recollecting and them imagining. And I think it also is a great representation of how they never really left the war.
No.
Like showing them their present self in the war back then shows that that's who they are. That war sculpted them to be who they are today.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I think they're still tightly holding on to what Norm said to them. And if you think about it, it kind of just stayed with them their whole life. It was their life after that. So, and I think that was brilliant. A brilliant decision by Spike Lee.
Oh, the way it was filmed, how like the screen would get small, and then I don't know what the aspect ratio of that is, but the screen would get smaller, and then the colorization of those flashback sequences reminded me, they reference a lot G.I. Joe, and I actually liked how it looked like, almost like the colorization. Not only did it feel with the Apocalypse Now color scheme and stuff like that, it almost had a very G.I. Joe cartoony colorization, but without it being, not serious.
No, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So I genuinely like that. Like every time like the screen started shortening up, I was like, oof, here we go again. I'm ready.
Yeah.
Because it was just filmed so well. And I like that. I'm a sucker for colorization. I'm a sucker for if something looks the part and stuff, especially when it comes to shooting flashback or air quote vintage scenes.
Yeah.
I love it when it changes the aspect ratio, when it changes even the quality. I think I'm not sure if they switched cameras. They probably just edited it to make it look just slightly more grainy, but it's just, I love aspects like that because it just makes it it feels so much more real.
I agree. One thing I did want to bring up, this movie is told in the perspective of 5 African American men who were in the Vietnam War. There are no movies like that. We have Apocalypse Now that did have black characters and kind of did touch on it a little bit, but we don't know a lot of things from the African American perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that has to change because this was a different war for them than for the white men.
And this was definitely those types of moments where I really showed, like, I sounded so ignorant. I had this thought to myself because when I was watching this movie, I literally said to myself, like, I never realized that Black people served in wars. Like, it was a very dumb statement, but it was something that I've never seen in movies. I've never heard about.
No, unfortunately, and I don't think that's ignorant at all. Unfortunately, we're only 22. We don't know, like, our education system, I think, has failed us in terms of a lot of things. And unfortunately, their representation in cinema is not there. We don't know the Black perspective of World War II.
Like, and occasionally, like, you'll get like I've seen before, like, photos of, you know, soldiers, of Black soldiers who were forced to serve in, like, the Civil War. I've heard of that. I've heard of, you know, being forced to serve either for the South or for the North, whatever it may be. But I never, like, it was just such a surreal, dumb moment I had in my head. I was like, I never thought Black people served in wars. And it just kind of showed me, not that I think it didn't exist.
No.
But it just kind of, like, I thought that never crossed my mind before.
No, and I think, unfortunately, there's no representation. And we don't learn a lot about what the African American perspective was. In the Vietnam War, I had no idea what it was like for them. I knew, obviously, racism. I knew that stuff because that's just, you know, that was the reality of it. But even, like, they served in World War II. They served in almost, I think, every war. The Korean War, all of it. And we don't know what it was like for them during the war and when they came back. We don't know.
And I really enjoyed the aspect that they actually did mention. Like, they mentioned the one, I think he served in, I can't recall the name, a young Black soldier who was 18 who took a grenade and shielded a grenade from his, you know, the other army men. And sorry, I don't know the technical army military terms. But at 18, he won a Purple Heart. And was, I believe, I'm not sure if they mentioned he was the youngest or he was the first African-American to win or to receive a Purple Heart.
And that's why this is important, because they are heroes. I'm sure there's a lot of stories like that we don't know about because of the fact of, like, racism and things like that. So, again, I think Spike Lee, genius, brings another topic to the table that none of us learn about or talk about anymore.
And I will say, so to lead up to the ending, there's a lot of action from the midway to the end of this film. There's a lot of action, and it's fantastic. It's very shocking, especially what happens to the character Eddie, and then the character Sapo. It is very shocking what happens in the end. But I do want to talk about how they all kind of joke about, oh, Rambo, and then in their own way, in the end, they become these Rambo-like characters, which I thought was pretty cool. I thought it was a pretty, and I liked how they specifically were like, man, I don't want, who wants to be the guy who jumps on a grenade and shields his, you know, friend, blah, blah, blah. And one of the guys ends up doing exactly that.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. So this shocked me. Is it true that if you jump on top of a grenade and if you shield it, because the guy, if you saw his character, I thought with a regular hand grenade, you would, and this is me not knowing military weapons, you would explode. I thought, like, it would be like what happened with Eddie. Meanwhile, this man, in the end, which character was it? I'm trying to recall his name.
It was the other one. It wasn't. Oh, it was Otis Eddie.
Melvin.
Yes, yeah.
Melvin. It was Melvin, where he jumps on the grenade. It kills him, but it doesn't. I was just shocked. I was like, does that happen? So if anyone knows how grenades happen, I'm curious.
So. I don't think they would put an unrealistic thing like that. And they talked about the soldier that did it for his team.
Yeah, and they talk about, but I was very shocked at how, like, because usually with grenades and stuff, you see, boom, full explosion, and then the body is nowhere to be seen because it exploded. So with this guy, when he sat on, like, not sat on it, but when he laid it on top of it, like, it kind of, he just went up in the air and back down just for a little bit and then was dead. And then you saw some blood trickle out, but I was like, I thought it was going to be a lot more.
Yeah.
That just shocked me. That was just a random thought. I was like, do grenades, like, is that really realistic?
I don't know.
If you know Grenadas, let us know. let's talk. Oh, and also, so there's this there's this oh, I'm trying. Do you remember what the saying was that they kept saying over and over again? It was from Storm and Norman. Oh, the bloods multiply.
Yeah.
We multiply. I loved how that phrase was used, because even though in the end, majority of the characters, the main characters who are introduced,
Spoiler.
die.
Yeah.
I mean, I announced spoiler alert in the beginning,
Oh, yeah.
but majority of the main characters do die. But when he says like we don't die, we multiply. I love that in the way when the money was distributed, it was distributed to different communities all across the way. Whether it was donated to these the group that oh my god, I can't speak today.
Okay.
That deassembled the bombs. Then it was donated to different Black Lives Matter community, and then I believe it was donated to someone else. But I loved how that saying came around in the end, and how it really did show, like, for them, that they don't die, they multiply.
Yeah. It was the ending is also very touching. We didn't talk about it, but Paul has a son, and basically him and his son have just a very bad relationship, and we find out that's because I think Paul's wife died from childbirth, right? That's what it was. And he sort of has this resentment for his son. And during the movie, what do you think? I feel like the relationship goes back and forth a lot. Like, they love each other.
Oh, it does, especially like,
all this
oh
stuff.
yeah, because you have the moment where it's almost like, and I think it's part of that, what we were talking about with in regards to PTSD, how you're always expected to be a man, and it was kind of like in the moments where his son was strong, he was his son. But in the moments where his son was weaker, like for example when he got shot in the leg, it was like, you're not my son. Like, he immediately flipped the switch based off of that. That's almost that stereotype that he was supposed to be in terms of a military man. Yeah. That if you're brave, if you're strong, you're chugging, you are a brother of mine. Yeah. But if you are weak, if you are hurt, and if you don't want to keep chugging through, then you are not. So I did show, and I really, what I thought, because I was like, wow, he was pretty bad to his son. In terms of as a father, he was really bad to his son and treated him poorly. Yeah. And his son did not deserve that. But I think it fully came around in the letter in the end. Yeah. Where, he admits like, hey, like, I am sorry that I've lived through so many, dramatic pasts in my life. And he said this brilliant quote, was like, I lived my life in horror, and in return I terrorized you. Something in the lines of that, which I thought was, in terms of their relationship, a good closure for them, because I can only imagine growing up as a son like that and having a father. And I think that also shows, I think that does happen in a lot of relationships that you see when you have a father who is military and a son who necessarily isn't. I love that relationship that they showed, and I love how they showed that the healing is possible even after so many years. Yeah, definitely. It was very, very touching. And like you said, it's realistic, because I'm sure a lot of these men went home and had babies and had to raise these children while still living their own nightmare. Yeah. And kind of projecting that onto them. Absolutely. So overall, Savanna? Oh my god. What do you rate this film? I gotta give it like a 9.5. I have to give it a 9.7. 9.7 is what my core is telling me. And that's what I will leave it with. I definitely think, and I can see, because in terms of reviews, critics praise this film, but the average viewer has been a little disappointed by Spike Lee. I think people are a little disappointed because this is definitely not traditional Spike Lee. This is not in terms of the plot, the setting, and everything. This is not something I would expect from him, but it was something that I think that couldn't have been done better than someone else than him. Like, I think this film, even though so different from his filmography, was made for him.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. I think people do need to give it more of a chance because, like me and you have said, this is one of his best.
Yeah.
However, I do think this has happened before with one of his films. That have you heard of Bamboozled?
Yes, I have.
It doesn't have the best, from what I understand. Like on IMDb, I think it has like a 5 or a 6.
Yeah, and I think it's also, I don't know, I feel like it's one of those things where Spike Lee's films can be very misunderstood.
Yeah, but at the same time, like I think the film he does things where it kind of reminded me of Do the Right Thing, where he takes a very serious situation and puts it in a like a narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we should review it one day because I think it's a great film. But I just think it's one of
I've
those things
actually haven't seen it. I've heard a lot about it. I know it's in the Criterion Collection because I was shocked because one day, like, I didn't hear about it until it was added in the Criterion. So I was just going through, and then of course I see the cover on Criterion. I'm like, excuse me?
Yeah,
So I
it's
had to
very
click on it to double check everything. But it does look like, I think he does something that, it's, to be honest, that people don't expect from a black director to make.
and I think that's why it's important for everybody to watch those movies because
Mm-hmm.
it's supposed to make you uncomfortable and realize what the history of what he's trying to do is. Um, but it's a funny story. I wanted to buy the DVD, but when I saw the cover, I was like, I don't think if someone walked into my house and they saw that, they would get the wrong idea. So that's one of the reasons I haven't bought the DVD yet.
No, buy the DVD. Just put it on a shelf. Just put it on a shelf. And if anyone asks, it's just like, just look it up. Just look it up. Don't. It's not like you have what, Birth of a Nation
Oh
DVD
yeah, no,
collector's
you're right.
edition.
No, no. But I definitely think that's a movie we should also review because it's important.
Bamboozled, not Birth of a Nation, right?
Bamboozle, Birth of we had a
Okay.
pledge rant about Birth of a Nation. No, Bamboozled.
I would definitely be down to do that. I definitely, it is something that I definitely want to see. Like, it's just something that, like, when you look at it, you're like, well, damn. Okay.
There's
So I
shock value to it. And I think that's what he was trying to go for.
Mm-hmm.
But
for sure. And I think also he does very well. Spike Lee does very well with shock value. And also, I like Spike Lee a lot because he pushes the barrier of what we like, and I hate to say it like this way, but what we expect black directors to make. Like, you know, and I'm not hating or anything, but at least for someone before I got more involved in educating myself in black directors and things like that, black directors are kind of synonymous at the time for me with Tyler Perry, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how Spike Lee is a director who has reached so many different genres, so many different topics, so many different ideas. Even some of them people would not expect a black director to talk about, especially blackface. That would be one of the last things you expect a black director to focus on and to almost make a comedic perspective of it while also talking about it seriously. Same with this movie, like having a black director add in, you know, a black character wearing a Make America Great Again hat is very, like, I don't know about you, but for me, like, hearing, like, when I first saw that, I was like, oh, and this is different.
I think he is one of those people that does an immaculate job at educating the public without putting them down. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I think Bamboozled and Do the Right Thing do point out injustices, all the disgusting, hateful things that this country has done to African Americans, but at the same time teaches us why it's wrong, teaches us why this was hurtful, why you shouldn't think like this, why you shouldn't do this. And that's super important because if you're going to change anybody's mind, that's how you do it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So this movie is available, like I said, on Netflix. Definitely check it out. Highly recommend it. As always, shout out to Homeboy James. Thank you so much. And if you'd like a shout out, you can always check out our Patreon. And then we also do have an affiliate link to a brand called Invisaware. All the info and everything is down below. Definitely check it out. And next time, we're going to be talking about a film and a short film. 24 frames and Seide, I think is how you pronounce it. Seide, S-E-I-D-E, Seide?
Yeah.
Seide? Is it D or with the T-H? No, it's not Spanish. So it's Seide.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll get the right pronunciation next time, if anything.
We'll get it. We'll get it eventually. But expect that from us next week. And also, by the time you are listening this, it would have passed July 4th. So hope you guys had a safe and fun July 4th.
For sure.
And if you didn't, I apologize. If I'm bringing up any bad feelings, anything horrible, I deeply apologize, and I hope you recover. Other than that, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.